In a survey done by LendingTree, it shows that 94% of Americans still think that owning a home is part of the American dream. And we all know that homeowners' net worth is so much higher than that of a renter, coming in about 40 times higher, with an average of about $400,000 for the homeowner and about $10,000 for the renter. So we all know that there's great things that come with home ownership, but when you're actually going through that buying process as a first-time home buyer, you almost get rosy-eyed and you kind of stop thinking about everything that comes along with home ownership. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the most common surprises for those first-time home buyers when they actually move to becoming a homeowner, what to really expect, and the things that they're not all bad surprises that I'm going to go over. Some are good, but it's just things that kind of get left out of your brain when you're actually in the process of buying a home because you're just so freaking excited to go find yourself a home and become that homeowner. So the first surprise is going to be the amount of upkeep needed for the property. And typically for a first-time home buyer, they're kind of coming from two paths of life. Either they're a renter currently and moving into home ownership, or they're still living with their parents and going directly into home ownership instead of renting. In either of these cases, they're not the sole person responsible for the upkeep of the property that they're currently in. Chances are things go wrong and it just gets fixed and they don't really have to worry about it. However, when you're the homeowner, well, guess what? Now it's your full responsibility to take care of the maintenance and the repairs needed for your home, or it's just going to kind of hurt yourself because you're not taking care of your property. And this means you should go into the buying process with enough savings so that after you make your home purchase, you still have some set aside in an account so that when something goes wrong, because it's not an if, it's a when something goes wrong, you're ready for it and you're ready for that cost so it doesn't set you back, stress you out, and cause any other damage. So go into it with that idea of having a little bit on the sideline even after your purchase. It's a huge deal. The second surprise is the cost of insurance and the changing tax rates. So typically when you go to get a mortgage, that lender is going to wrap into your payment your property taxes and your insurance costs per year. So every time you make a mortgage payment, a little bit of that is going into an escrow account that they're going to use to pay out to the respected parties, the taxes and the home insurance. And of course, these aren't necessarily set prices because tax rates can change from year to year, and so can insurance. So you just want to be aware that there can be a variability in there, because the first time it happened to me, I was pretty caught off guard because I'm usually pretty good with my numbers, and I'm like, I know what my mortgage payment is. Why is it different this month? And then I looked back and realized, oh, taxes have went up a little bit, so they increased it so I would have enough in my escrow account to pay it. Because guess what? We all need home insurance, and if you don't pay your property taxes, well, chances are you're not going to have a home for very long. So the number 3 surprise is your neighbors and the effects they have on you. So this could be looked at as a positive or a negative, and it's kind of hard to tell what to expect. Of course, when you're going to look at the house and maybe you like it, you can always ask the owner what the neighbors are like and see what they says. Who knows if they're going to be telling the truth? Maybe they'd be like, oh yeah, they're great, even though they're a horrible headache. Or after the showing, before the showing, maybe you're just scoping out the neighborhood and you see some people out front and start talking to them, kind of just get a good feel for it. But either way, it's kind of a thing that's out of your control because it's what you buy. So if you don't want to have to deal with neighbors, make sure you're looking for some more land where they're not in such an immediate vicinity of you. And the other thing I've noticed is even with me, I live in a pretty dense area for housing, but like, I feel like people just don't talk to their neighbors anymore. I've been here for 2 years and I talked to about 1 to 2 guys on my street, and that's about it. Nobody really leaves their house, it seems. And again, don't look at this just as a negative. I mean, who knows? You could have your next great friend be your neighbor and just have a helping hand there, and you lend a helping hand. Like, it can be great, and again, it can be a pain in the butt because maybe they're very annoying, or maybe they're very messy and you have to look at their annoying mess. So just kind of scope that out and get a feel of what you want. I don't want to be like an annoying neighbor, but if you could hit that like and subscribe button, it would go miles, and I greatly appreciate it. The number 4 surprise is the knowledge to actually upkeep the property. And this is a little bit different from actually how much is involved in the upkeep of the property. In this one, I want to harp on the idea of getting a home inspection because Not only when you get a home inspection does that home inspector go through the whole house telling and finding the condition of every system and how the property condition actually is, but if you're there and you follow that home inspector throughout the inspection, when you come to things that you don't know much about, you can ask them and they'll be able to give you some advice on it and maybe tell you what the maintenance timeline is on it every year, every couple of years. Because I've dealt with some people that have been coming from the south up north, and they never really had to deal with heating systems down south. So when they came up during the home inspection, they look at a furnace and they're like, how do I take care of this? So that's where the home inspector can be like, here's the oil tank, here's where the trucks will fill it outside of your house, and then you probably want to get someone to come in here and service once a year. If you can't do that, at least once every 2 years, just to keep this system running as efficiently as possible and making sure that you have heating during the winter, because it is very important up here in the Northeast. Number 5 surprise is a pretty good one, and it's a relatively stable cost of living. I know, yes, I mentioned earlier that your mortgage payment can actually vary from year to year. Overall, it is still very stable payment. It's not like you're going up by hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. For me, the highest I think I've seen is like $90. Now, of course, if your property taxes are very high because you own a very, very, very nice house, it could go up a little bit more, but again, the cost is probably relative to you and your lifestyle. But overall, that payment is going to stay the same from the day you purchase the property. And even if prices explode like they have during the time of COVID and the last few years, well, guess what? The property that I bought in 2019, even though that value of the property has nearly doubled in the last 4 to 5 years, well, guess what? My payment hasn't moved at all. So that is one huge benefit of owning, because if I was renting, well, guess what? Rent would have increased in the past 5 years and there was nothing I could do about it. Number 6 surprise is the increase in property values and the possible decrease in property values. So you know how I mentioned in the intro that the net worth of a homeowner is 40 times greater than that of a renter, $400,000 versus $10,000. Well, a huge reason for this disparity is because most of the time with homeowners, their net worth is actually tied up into the equity of their house. And what the equity means is basically, say you have a $500,000 house, but you've lived there a decent amount of time and now your mortgage is only $350,000. Well, technically you have $150,000 of equity in that property, because if you were to sell it, you would make $150,000 after you pay off your mortgage. So this is where home ownership comes in so much of building the homeowner's net worth. Is because when you're renting, you're not paying down a balance to increase what you're going to sell. You're just giving money and getting a month worth of living area. Where with a homeowner, you're paying down a mortgage balance, and as of late, properties have just increased. So this is going down and this is going up, which is great. But I do want to say, keep in mind that this can positively affect you, but it can also negatively affect you if the housing market crashes and your housing, that $500,000 house plummets by 20%, which I don't really think really ever happens except for maybe 2008. But even by 20%, well, now it's worth $400,000. You have a mortgage of $350,000, so you still have 50 grand equity. But just because it drops in value doesn't mean you're losing money. It doesn't mean that you have to sell. The only time you would not get that $500,000 is if you were selling in a down market, but maybe you hold through that down market, and on the other side, when it peaks back up, well, now that $500,000 property is worth $600,000, and it's been another 10 years, and now your property balance on your mortgage is only like $300. So now you have 300 grand of equity. And that's just a crazy thing about real estate that makes it pretty fun and pretty cool to invest in. Then the number 7 surprise is another great one, the pride of home ownership and the actual attachment you get to the property. Because I feel like not enough people truly understand this until they actually get a house of their own. Of course, when you're growing up as a child, if you have a stable home that's like for me, I had a good home. We moved a few times, but every home was at least 5 to 7 years. So you get an attachment to that location and your bedroom and all that stuff. And the same happens when you're an adult and you buy your own place, because it's your home base. It's your sense of security. You're familiar with it. You go home and you can just let your mind relax because you know This is my home. Where like, yes, renting, you have your own space and you can do your own stuff, set up your own living room, but at the end of the day, in the back of your head, you know, once that lease is up, well, the landlord can kick you out. They can say, hey, we want another renter. They can charge more money and you're just kind of stuck with it. In other words, you know that it's out of your control, and subconsciously that's kind of always eating away at you and not ever letting you really settle down because it's not a place of your own. So surprises for home ownership are not always bad. Of course, there's a few things that people overlook that you really want to pay attention to, because if you keep overlooking at, it'll go worse and worse and worse. But there are great benefits that come with home ownership, and I think that's why it's 94% of Americans still think it's part of the American dream, because it really is such a staple of having your own place. And of course, it's not for everyone. Some people just love renting, love the freedom, I guess, it brings with not having to be stuck with one place. I don't really like that idea, but some people love it, not having to take care of anything and all that. To each their own. But if you're looking for a house in New Hampshire, I'd be more than happy to help you walk through the whole buying process so that you can become one of these first-time home buyers, and then you get to do all this stuff to your property. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, hit that like button. I'll catch you guys next week.